Hello, my name is Professor Paul Gruhn, and welcome to CSC230 Database for Web Applications. The name of this course is a little misleading. Quite honestly, we're not going to do anything on the web in this first 8 weeks. The second 8 weeks, the fundamentals of internet programming, will definitely be focused on everything we've learned in this class dealing with databases and applying it to the web and PHP. So let's get started. The first thing you need to do is get some software installed on your machines, and let's talk about operating systems. I'm going to be doing a Windows 7 throughout the whole class. Everything will work on a Mac and a Linux environment. However, I can't support all of that. I do have a Mac and I use a Mac a lot, but for this class I can guarantee you technical support for Windows 7 because I'll be able to duplicate it and do everything you're doing. The actual software, the MySQL server and the workbench, they all run the same no matter what operating system. But if you have some sort of hiccup that's going to be related with the Macintosh environment or the Linux environment, that's really going to be on you. I'll try to help you as much as I can, but we got to stay focused on one operating system. The other thing to consider if you're a Mac person is installing a VMware or a boot camp. Boot camp's a little bit of a pain. I like VMware, and there's free VMware from Oracle. And basically with VMware you can run Windows on top of your Macintosh, and I use that at work all the time. That way I have all my Mac stuff that I like, and I have my Windows stuff that I use when I need to use it. So in the syllabus you will notice, first of all, everybody asks, is that my Corvette? And so that's my old one. I sold it last September, and hopefully when the weather gets a little warmer I'll try to get a new picture of my newer Corvette. This is an 84. I bought a 96 a couple of weeks ago, so I'm kind of excited about that. Thank you for signing up for this class so I can pay for my toys. Let's see. First thing to do is in the syllabus you'll notice this section. Do this ASAP. Vital software you need: Notepad++, install MySQL Community Server 5.6, install MySQL Workbench, and then the book files. And these are all in the appendix, and you can see starting on page 550, I think it's like 556 in the book, it actually starts how to load it. There's also sections on how to load it for Macintosh and Linux, I believe, in at least Macintosh for Appendix B. But again, we're trying to focus on Windows here. So the book does not tell you to download Notepad++. I just highly recommend it. It's an awesome piece of software, and it's way better than just good old Notepad. So let's do that real quick. What's really nice is if you pull up the PDF file, the syllabus, you can actually do a control-click, and it'll take you right out to Notepad website. Hit download, save your file. Let's get rid of that guy. Oops. Oh. Save your file. It's thinking. In your downloads folder, you will see something that looks like this, and it might not be, maybe by the time you do this it'll be 6.7.56, who knows. Double click on this, say yes if you have security. English, and this is all very straightforward. Make sure you're putting this where you want to put it. For this piece of software I'm going to be installing it on my C drive, but all of the other software that we install, for me, I'm going to be installing it on my E drive. It's a lot bigger, so it really depends on where your data space is and how your computer's set up. I'm just taking all the defaults. I actually like the old icons. You don't need to click on that if you want, but you don't have to click on anything else there. If you want a shortcut on your desktop, go ahead, but I'm not going to do that. Doesn't take long at all, and I'm unclicking that, click Run. Now if I go Start, All Programs, and I'll find Notepad++. You can't see this on my screen. Notepad++. Now, here's Notepad++. And this is just so much more powerful than regular Notepad. One of the things that I like is, the biggest thing is, look at, I can have multiple tabs and be running multiple documents at once, where regular Notepad doesn't allow you that. Also, there's a lot of languages that are involved for HTML programming and things like that, like PHP, like under P, you can see PHP, that you can choose that language and it will do the highlighting of the text, or under H for HTML. So what's really nice, it will give you color-coded editing and keys for that. A lot of times in this class, it might just be easy to pull up Notepad, have it available to type stuff, or cut and paste something from the syllabus, from the book, from the blackboard, pop it into Notepad just so it's there. A lot of times if you type something into Workbench or at a command line, you lose it and then you have to type it over again. I just like having Notepad++ always open, always available for me wherever I go. Now I'll have to be honest with you, I do have a little bit of an advantage here, is that I have a few screens. I actually have 4 screens on my for my PC. So what's really nice for me is, by having multiple screens, is that I can keep things in the wings, keep things available. Otherwise, you have to use the Alt-Tab key in Windows and flip through the different windows that are open. So that's really up to you how you handle that. And we all develop kind of our own style and way of working with the machine. So Notepad++ is installed. Don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm even going to just delete that from my downloads. I don't need that anymore. Next thing we're going to do is install MySQL Community Server. By now, you better have this book. You definitely need it. And I am on page 558. And if you read, there's a little bit about the community server. And then on page 559, basically it tells you to go to this link. And if I go to the dev link here, I'm going to hit Control. I'm going to say remember, allow. So now here I can download MySQL Community Server. And what we want to do is, the book is really clear, and it suggests that when downloading it, that we use 5.5. We use that version 5.5. And so notice here, if we download development GA, this 5.6. Don't download 5.6. Let's look for development releases. No, let's go back. Okay, here we go. So under Download MySQL Installer, click on MySQL Server. Under that, you'll see over here, looking for previous GA versions. We want Server 5.5. Click on that link. And now you're at the install place. Now, depending upon which version you have, are you running 32-bit or 64-bit, you would choose which one, or you can do it as an archive, as a zip file. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to download the installer. So let's click on download, and I'm clicking up for 64-bit. It wants me to create an account. I'm going to say no thanks to start my download. Save the file. And I'm going to pull up my downloads button, my downloads folder. There we go. So the installer is already there. If I double click on the installer, click run. And this is pretty much just going to be a walkthrough. It should be a pretty straightforward piece of cake. Next. accept the terms, next. Let's just do typical or complete. That's up to you. I'm going to go with bare bones and just assume the book didn't say anything about doing a complete. So let's just say typical, and then click on install. And let's see how long it takes to boil this water. What I'm hoping that will happen for me is that it'll pop up and give me an opportunity to choose my E drive. Yes, I want to allow this. And click on next. It doesn't look like anything here. And next, looks like some launch MySQL interface. Click the finish button too. So now that's interesting. Say yes. Here we go. I'm just clicking next through this. Choose a configuration, create optimum setup. For the detailed configuration, I'm going to use only the machines that do not already have MySQL Server installed. So let's assume we don't, and I'm going to choose standard configuration, click next. Service name is MySQL. Okay. The book definitely said basically to accept the defaults, and so on this we're going to go ahead and allow it to launch MySQL Server automatically. I personally, if you depends how much you're going to be using it, you can always turn that off in the under Windows Services. And I'm going to include the directory in the Windows path. I am going to add that to it. Click next. We need a root password. Make sure so this is a root password for the database. So choose a password and type it again. Write it down somewhere secretly. We don't need to enable root access from remote machines. This option created an anonymous account. This option will create an anonymous account. This server. Please note that this can lead to insecure systems, so let's not do that. And click next. And now it's thinking about stuff. Ready to execute. Prepare configuration. Write configuration. Please press execute to start the configuration. So let's go ahead and do this. See, it looks like it's going to put it on the C drive, and I'm kind of bummed about that. I'd rather have wished maybe if I would have done the other, not the straightforward one, it would have allowed me to prompt it. So that's all right. We'll just allow it, take the typical ones and go with. Okay, so boom, if I click finish, should be done. Okay. Okay, so MySQL is now installed, and we can prove it real quickly. If we go out to our C drive and we just open Explorer up, if I go to Explorer, if I remember correctly, I think I put it under Programs, and you'll see a folder somewhere. So it didn't go under that one. Let's see. Program Files. There we go. It's under Program Files. MySQL Server, and you can see that it's there, and basically the software that you need is available under MySQL Server there. However, let's run it, and to run it at this point, for me, if you notice, it put a command line prompt here, but go all programs, start all programs, MySQL Server, and you'll see command line prompt. Now this will pop up a good old-fashioned DOS window, and at that point we type in the password that we created, and we're now in SQL, and we can do SQL stuff here. But since we don't know how to do SQL stuff, I'll give you your first command, and that'll be exit. Now, this class has been taught many times just using the DOS window and everything after the command line. What this book is teaching us to do right off the bat is to use this thing called a workbench. So what we're going to do now, instead of, we have the command line available to us, but what we're going to do is focus now on installing Workbench to make that available. So if we go down to pull up the syllabus, and then click on this link where it says MySQL downloads Workbench versus MySQL, control click. Here we go for Workbench, and the book was telling us in installing Workbench 5.2.38 is the one to go for. Download MySQL, download source packages. If we plus this out, here we go. We don't need source packages. Okay, so installer, hang on a second. Okay, because MySQL Workbench has obviously been new and improved since this book has been written, what we need to do is under here where it says MySQL Workbench 6.2.4, the book wants us to actually use 5.2.38. Notice here, looking for previous general releases of the versions. Now what we do by clicking there, we get a pull down, and 5.2.47 to go from 3.8 to 4.7, no big deal. So use 5.2, click that. Notice here there's Linux and OS, but we want Windows. 32-bit, the installer or the zip archive, we're going to use the installer, and I'm going to click on download. No, I don't want to join, just start my download, save the file, start, then downloads, and then notice that the Workbench file is now there. I can double click on that and then just run, and this should be pretty straightforward as well. See, destination folder, I didn't see that when we installed the other. Let's do a complete. So in most cases, my install should be identical to yours because we're using the C drive. So click OK there. And then it runs right into the Workbench, and you can see where I'm at MySQL Workbench. I'm going to close it, close my downloads, start all programs, scroll down to MySQL, and notice MySQL Workbench. And we're going to be living most of our time right here in the Workbench. So right now, what you've done is installed 3 pieces of software. You've installed Notepad++ and MySQL Server, and you've installed Workbench. What we need to do for the homework assignment is you've been given this handout, this appendix handout, the assignment. We need screenshots placed right here. So if I was to go to Notepad++, there's my Notepad++. I happen to have Capture Express. I use that for my screenshots. And boom, boom. You can do whatever you want for that. And then basically, there's a screenshot. And what you can do, make it a little easier, make it smaller. Now, MySQL Community Server, what I need is that DOS window, all programs, MySQL, there's the server. And if you give me something like that, run your capture software like that. There. And now do the same for Workbench. Run workbench. Let's make this guy a little smaller. There we go. Run your capture software. And there's tons of capturing softwares. Like that. Copy. And then make that a little smaller. Okay, so all we have left now is to install the source files for the class, for the book. There are source files are listed on the module 1 section. There's 4 SQLs. If you open them up in Notepad or download them, that's one way, but give me a second, and what we'll do is we'll walk through what it says on page 560 to download and install the source files. These are the databases and the tables you're going to need. Okay, so let's get the source files that we need. If we go back to the syllabus, click on download and install, the link there. Wish it would remember it. It'll take you out to the book's website. You want to go to downloads. Actually, let's go click back. Right here, all books for Windows. Here they have for other systems, but all books for Windows. We need that link there. It may prompt you. It already prompted me for your email address and first name and last name. And just go ahead and put your name and email and click you don't want any advertisements, and then you'll get this screen here to download the data, and then click save. Only takes a half a second. And out on your downloads folder, you'll see this file here. And just run it. I'll click on it and run it. I'm going to put this, for me, this data, I'm going to put this on E, and I'm choosing Murex 2 because I already have a Murex directory out there for my teacher stuff, but I'm just going to choose that. And now, so now the needed SQL statements and all the files you need for your class are available. If we go to my E drive, and if we find my Murex 2, a MySQL folder, and here's all the scripts. There's a DB setup, and this first one, Create Databases SQL, is inclusive of all of these 3, the AP, the EX, and OM. If I right-click on this and edit with Notepad, remember Notepad++, what we have is basically a bunch of, it's a big text file, it's a TXT file, but just ending in .SQL, so we know that it's a SQL file. And this script creates all 3 databases, AP, EX, and OM. And the first thing it's going to do is create the AP database. And it drops the database AP if it exists, and then it creates it. Then it says use the database. And you're going to learn these things right as you read chapter 1. So a database, think about a database as a filing cabinet, and then the filing cabinet has drawers, so with the drawers will be tables. So we're going to create a database called AP. Now that it's created, let's use it. Let's make this the active database. Now create a table. That's going to be a drawer, or it's going to be a file. The table here called General Ledger Accounts has fields, account number, description. Let's create another table called Terms. Create another table called Vendors, Invoices, Invoice line items. And then it goes on. Now, once all the tables are created, now what it does is then it's going to insert data into the various tables. Insert into the vendors table. Insert into the vendor contacts table. Insert into the invoices table. And now we come down, keep going. Now it's going to create the EX database. So it's going to drop it if it exists. It's going to use the EX, and then it's going to create the tables it needs for that, inserting data for that. And then we move down, it's inserting a bunch of data, and come down, come down, and now it's going to create the OM database. It's going to drop it if it already exists, it's going to use it, and then it's going to start creating tables, creates a bunch of tables, order details, and then it starts inserting data in. Basically, all of these commands, this file is 1,128 lines long. You're going to be learning all of these commands, and if you already have some programming knowledge and wisdom with this, you can just read this and kind of get an idea of what you're going to be learning and seeing. So this file exists, it creates all three databases. Now what we need to do is we need to go into MySQL, go into the workbench, we're going to go into Workbench and click on local instance. It's going to ask us, I'm going to tell it to save the password in the vault so I don't have to prompt that all the time. Click OK. And now we are in the default for Workbench. Get rid of all this stuff here. So now what we need to do is run and execute that script. Okay, to execute that script, to create the everything we need to go File, Open SQL Script. So you can have scripts already built, and let's open this. We need to locate it. If you remember, I put it in my E drive in Murex 2. Lay that down here. MySQL, DB setup, and create databases. Don't worry about the other three. So now it's there, and that script now is here. All that same stuff that we just read in Notepad, and I'm guessing right here, just that little lightning bar. Oh, wait a minute. What we want to do is execute the portion of the script or everything if there is no selection. Here, this one here with the I is if you were to select just a part, it would only do that amount. We want to choose this lightning bolt here. Click it. Click that. And then down in the bottom half here, you can see what it actually did is that it created all of the databases. You can see here it created the AP database and did a bunch of inserts, and then it created the EX database and created the OM database and used it. So at this point here, I'm going to pull up my screen capture and just go from here to here. And this way, what I can see is that you've got the script here and that it's run. Come back to my homework and then place that there. So if you've done all this and you've got these 4 pictures here in this, you can now submit this as a completed homework assignment. And you're ready to go. Start reading Chapter 1. Chapter 1, there's no hands-on work. It's purely read and answer 20 questions. And my suggestion is as you read Chapter 1, you take a look at the PowerPoint for Chapter 1, and then you take a look at the PowerPoint for Chapter 1, go through that pretty quickly, and then print out or open up the homework assignment for Chapter 1, and basically as you read, you should be able to answer the questions and then submit those via Blackboard, and you will be all set. Great. So we're off to a good start.